Hey, David Wygant here, 10 Minutes of Reality today. Today is going to be a great day. Every day is a great day, but now we're finally in the month of March. And for those of you on the East Coast, you're probably thinking to yourself, spring should be here soon. For those of us on the West Coast, we think to ourselves, wow, only a few more weeks and the sun starts melting our skin again. If you've been out in LA, April through October, I call it the skin melting season. You literally walk out, you literally feel like your skin is dripping from your body because the sun is way too strong. Today, we're going to talk about success, taking risks. That's what life is all about. Why should we do the same old every single day? Why should we date the same people? Why should we go to the same job? Why should we expect mediocrity in our life? In life, when we take chances, we start to literally succeed. If you look at anybody who's ever been successful, myself included, we did things that were outside the box, things that mommy and daddy said we shouldn't do. Most of us go to school and then we follow some path, especially if you're from the East Coast. We follow this amazing path that mom and dad spelled out for us. Little David was supposed to go and little David was supposed to be this. Because my dad was a stockbroker, I should have been a stockbroker. I decided to break the realm and be an actor bartender in my 20s in New York City. I gave my grandmother a heart attack. My father disowned me. And my mother thought I was the coolest guy in the entire world, yet she was stoned most of the time on Valium and weed. So I could have done anything, and my mother thought I was cool. Today, I've got a fellow East Coaster, Paul Mecurio, no relation to the Mecurio unbelievable Italian market of Mamaroneck for you Westchester people who listen in. Paul, you took a risk. You were an investment banker. You were a lawyer. You were following the perfect path to life. And then all of a sudden you woke up one day and what happened?
Well, it was not, it was a little more evolutionary, if you will. I grew up in New England and ended up at doing M&A law and then M&A investment banking on Wall Street. And no plans to do anything other than do what you just said. There's sort of, we kind of came from a middle class background, I assume, sort of like yourself, and nobody in the entertainment business. So no thoughts of going into entertainment, just doing a traditional job for 30, 35 years and then retiring to Florida like everybody else, I guess. And basically got one of my first paycheck when I was in law school. I had these like ideas for short films. I always loved comedy. Again, no plans to do comedy, just I basically said, well, okay, let me go buy a little camera and I'll just start making some films. And I did, and then one of them got into the Aspen HBO Comedy Festival, and I lied at work and told them I was sick for the weekend and I was at a festival, and I was in this giant movie theater seeing my short film on the screen where usually I'd seen real films being made by people. It was very, very bizarre. And then I got invited that day to a luncheon that was being hosted for young filmmakers. And I was sitting at a table with Albert Brooks and the Hudlin brothers and Spike Lee, being told and talking about making films. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? I got a deal going on back in New York that I'm supposed to be working on. It was the most bizarre thing ever. So I thought, okay, well, that happened. That's kind of cool. And then we'll leave it at that. And I started writing jokes as a hobby, and one thing led to another. And I had amassed quite a few jokes, but again, I didn't know what I was going to do with them. And then one night, our firm was invited to this private function, pretty fancy shindig, and Jay Leno was the private entertainment. And I went, and I wasn't going to go. I almost was like, I got too much going on. And I said, what the heck? And I went and I printed out all my jokes, and I went to see him. I went to, hoping to just meet him and say hello. And he was he did the performance. It was a private performance for about 150 people. And I went up to him afterwards. I said, I'm a big fan, and I don't know if you want need comedy jokes or anything like that, but I have these jokes and I don't know what to do with them, and I'm probably never going to use them. And I gave them to him. And he's like, okay, he really does
Right.
talk like that, like they're letting helium out of a balloon very slowly. And he goes, hey, come back. I go, what? He goes, you might want to put your name and your phone number on here so I know how to reach you. I was so nervous, like I just gave him and just ran away. And I just thought, okay, well, I got a really nice professional blow off from a guy who's, approached all the time, and he'll never call me. But at least whatever. So a couple of days later, he calls me and he says, he goes, it's Jay Leno. And I thought it was a joke. I thought it was my friend, like pretending to be Jay Leno. And I'm like, yeah, right. And at one point I even said to him, you do a lousy Jay Leno impression. He's like,
Oh,
this is
that's
Jay
funny.
Leno. He goes, I think I do a pretty good Jay Leno. He's really funny. And, he said, I read your stuff and, I need jokes for the Tonight Show, and you could start sending me jokes in, and if I use them, I'll pay you. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? He goes, if I use something, I'll pay you, $50 a joke. And I'm like, okay. And that was weird. I hang up. I'm like, okay. And then the next thing I know, about 4 days later, maybe I get a call from him again. It's like, hey, it's Jay Leno. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing calling me, man? This is weird. And he says, I'm going to use one of your jokes tonight on the Tonight Show. And he does my joke. He pays me $50 for this joke. I got together with my wife, then my girlfriend, now my wife, and a couple of friends, and popped a bottle of champagne and saw him do this joke for $50, and it blew my head off my shoulders. Now, just to put it in context, I was doing merger deals, like big significant merger deals, like that were on the front page of the Wall
Right.
Street Journal. So you'd think the $50 joke would pale by comparison, so to speak, but it had more power over me than these M&A deals I was doing. And I couldn't figure out why at the time, but then I figured out later, I think it was, because, I had created something that was my own and somebody responded to it. And that was really powerful, those words that came out of that box were mine, and so then I became obsessed with writing jokes. So I was taking 2 notebooks to deal meetings, and one was for the notes for the deal, and one was for for jokes. And I wasn't taking any deal notes. I was just taking joke notes. And
Oh
then
no.
and I'd have to go back to my office to recreate the minutes of the meeting. It was pretty crazy. And then Leno, so I sending stuff into Leno, and Leno. So now this is evolving over time. So and it wasn't like I even after I sold him the joke and he did it, it wasn't like I'm going to go leave and go into comedy. Like it's very hard to sort of. It's sort of like being indoctrinated into a way of thinking for 30 years, which is go get a traditional job, have 2.2 children and a white picket fence, and live your life pretty much like everybody else. And there's nothing wrong with that. So it's not like you sort of free yourself from that thinking in one day. I don't think anyway. Maybe somebody does, but not me. This was a slowly evolving thing. So I start going out and trying the jokes at open mic nights because Leno's like, try the jokes out before you send them to me. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? He goes, there's bars that have open mic nights. So I started to live this secret double life where I would sneak out of work because I was working all nighters doing these M&A deals, and I'd sneak out of work and I go to these dive bars around New York City doing open mic nights. And New York, like down in the Bowery, like some
Oh
really
yeah.
bad places. And I literally was sneaking out of work when I had like if they give me an hour for dinner, I wouldn't go to dinner. All the other associates would. I would go and I do, one place I worked was called Downtown Beirut 2. That was literally the name. And it was down in the Bowery, and it was a complete and utter crappy, shithole. Is it okay if I swear? I'm sorry. I don't
Oh
know if
yeah,
that's
no,
okay.
no, no,
Yeah.
yeah, swear. And that was when the Bowery was the Bowery, not when it was a hipster parade. Full,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
full of man buns and mandals running around. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
it was the Bowery, just so people can
Right.
understand what it was like.
Right. And so so I would, what I would do is I'd sneak out of work and I get in a car and have a company car take me downtown, and I change up in the car. I take my cufflinks off and I'm an investment banker, Wall Street lawyer guy, and my fancy watch and my suspenders, and I pull my shirt tails out, mess up my hair, and try to look like I belong downtown. But these were places like when people borrow money from you to go drinking on the streets, homeless people. This is where they would go to drink with the money. Okay, and one of the places I worked was called Downtown Beirut 2. It was actually called Downtown Beirut 2, and it was a pit. Like there was a hooker worked out of there. It was a dysfunctional Cheers. They dealt drugs out of there. There was a sign on the men's room door that said the toilet seat is only to be used to go to the bathroom, not to cut coke. Thank you, the management. And it actually said, thank you, the management on it. It was, and there was a hooker that worked there that actually gave you notes on your jokes. Like she would come up and go, "How come you're not doing that joke about cab drivers anymore?" And she'd tell you what was wrong with the joke. So a typical night would be I'd go down and I'd pick a number out of a hat and I'd wait to be, chosen to go up. And I went up and one night, and just before I go up, there's a fight at the pool table, and a guy grabs his neck and he starts screaming, "He cut me, man! He cut me!" And it was a drug deal gone bad.
Oh wow!
And one guy cut him, another guy across the side of the neck with a box cutter, and I'm like, okay, this is weird, but I don't really think much of it. And he's screaming and he's drunk. He cut me. His girlfriend's crying. "Oh my God, look at my thing." It's just going crazy. I am walking to the door, and then all of a sudden, I hear, "Okay, you guys ready for some comedy?" and, and and I think the show's over, but apparently not. And I go on stage, and I didn't know that I didn't have to go on stage. I thought I had to go, and I go, "Nice to be here. I always wanted to follow a slashing," which I thought was a pretty good line,
And that's a good joke.
Yeah, right. Thank you. And I hadn't been doing it that long. And the guy who got cut heard me say slashing, and he charges the stage. He goes, "Hey, you making fun of me? I don't need to take any shit from you." And he takes all these bloody napkins and he wads them up and he throws them at me.
Oh, God.
And one of them, they stick to my shirt. So now I've got this bloody napkin blood stain on my, Brooks Brothers $200 shirt. Now, a normal person at this point is like, "Oh, I'm going to get off stage. This is weird." Not me. I keep going. I'm like, fuck this. I'm going to finish my set. I don't care what anybody says, And no one's paying attention now. The cops are there taking a police report. Like it was just a complete mayhem. And then at least I'm getting through my material. And then at some point, the guy who got cut turns to me and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing anyway?" Because he's drunk. I go, "I'm trying to tell jokes." He goes, "Oh yeah?" He goes, "I like jokes." And he turns back to the room and he goes, "Hey, everybody, shut the fuck up. This guy's trying to tell jokes." And the whole place shuts up. And I have the best 2 minutes of my life because everybody was afraid to not laugh at me because of the crazy screaming bleeding man, right?
Right.
So, I get up, I get off stage, I get back in the car, I drive back up to work, I dress back up in the car, I got this blood stain. I had to go back to work right away. And I think I'm going to hide it with like a file folder, and I got this grapefruit sized blood stain on my shirt. And I walk into a conference room with like 15 other lawyers and bankers and the senior partner who couldn't find me all night screaming at me going, "Where have you been? Why do you have a blood stain on your shirt?" And I thought, okay, this secret double life is over. I'm going to be caught, And I'm standing there and I'm paused and I'm wondering what to do. And all of a sudden, another lawyer goes, "What kind of shirt is that?" I go, "It's a Brooks Brothers shirt." "Why?" He goes, "Oh, I know how to get blood out of a Brooks Brothers shirt." He goes, "Club soda and lemon juice." And another guy goes, "No, no, no, no. Armani, that's the shirt you want." They were literally arguing about what the best shirt was to get blood out of. And all I could think is like, these guys are remaking American Psycho in their spare time, you know? And that became my life. And I was slowly like having a nervous breakdown, trying to figure out now, you know, I got to make a decision because I can't keep up this double life. It's catching up with me and it's really stressful. And, you know, just the M&A job alone was a really stressful job. And so I was really lost and torn. I was trying to, should I leave? I don't know. Should I do this full time? It's really scary. And I don't know. And I was wringing my hands and what should I do? And, you know, if I was asking all sorts of advice from different people. And then I finally was like, God, what should I do? And I literally was going to church and I was praying. And then all of a sudden one day my father died unexpectedly. He had a heart attack and I had to go home to run the family furniture business.
Oh,
and I went home.
Now that was 360 degrees, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what happened was, my mother and father started the business years ago. They were pretty along in their years. And my wife, my mother, when I went home, and my wife is from there too. We met in high school. So we're, you know, a lot of connection to that, to Rhode Island. And I went home for the funeral and she's like, "I think I'm going to retire and you want to take over the business." And I'm like, "Okay, well, this is what God wants me to do." And I thought, okay, well, then this is what I'll do. And I won't do Wall Street and I won't do comedy. But I was really being a pussy because I was too afraid to make the hard decision. So I was, in theory, saying, well, this is what I have to do. I have to take over the family business. It's my obligation, which was bullshit. I could have just, you know, really had bigger balls at the time and made the decision one way or the other to stay on Wall Street or to do comedy. But I copped out. I didn't know I was copping out at the time, but I did. So I said, yeah, I'll stay. So I basically took a leave of absence from Wall Street and I started trying to run this business with my mother, which was impossible. She started the business herself. She really didn't want to give up any control. So, and she grew up in the Depression. So she has a very antiquated way of doing things. Like she doesn't have a filing system. She literally would put all of her files in like styrofoam coolers and carry them around. And because they were lightweight and it was easy to transport from one place to another. And I used to say to her, like, this is ridiculous. But basically when she got audited, it looked like she was going on a picnic. It was crazy, right?
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And she would lock, she can't hear and she's very flighty and forgetful. So she would lock customers in the store. Like she would forget that there was somebody in the store, didn't hear that somebody was in the store, and she'd have to go run an errand. And she'd run out and she locked a woman in the store one day for almost 4 hours. And I had to and I went and I opened the door. I go, "Ma'am, what are you doing in my mother's store? Did you break in?" She goes, No. I was in here and your mother was here. And then all of a sudden she wasn't here. And I tried to leave and I've been locked in here for 4 hours. She locked me in because it's one of those commercial doors. You have to lock with a key, right? It's not like, it's not like a house lock. So I go, "What have you been doing?" She goes, "Well, I browsed a lot." She goes, "I took a nap on that sofa."
Oh, you knew that was coming.
Exactly. And she goes, "Is your name Paul?" I go, "Yeah." She goes, "I took messages." She actually took messages for me, right?
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. This is all true. And so, but then the final straw was my mother on Sunday nights in Providence, Rhode Island. People put their garbage cans out on the sidewalk and she would go through people's garbage looking for good garbage, like not food, but stuff that people throw out, you know, the broken clocks and things like that need to be fixed. Cause that's that Depression era mentality.
Oh yeah,
so
totally.
So here's this woman with, you know, had the balls and the chutzpah and the brains to start a very successful furniture business. And yet part of her is still living in the old country, you know, and I'm with her one night and she's standing over and she would make me stop and like be watch out for her while she did this. And I'm like, she's like, I mean, come on. She just was so stubborn. I just did it so she wouldn't argue with me. And one night she's standing over a garbage can holding a broken clock going, "I can't believe these people threw this clock out. They're crazy." And I'm like, "They're crazy? I'm like I was on Wall Street doing merger deals. I'm now lookout on some bad Italian American version of Antiques Roadshow. What the fuck am I doing here, right? So I'm like, well, this isn't where I belong. And now I was very lost because my whole life I was very clear about what I wanted to do, and now I didn't know what to do. Like Wall Street didn't feel right, comedy didn't feel right because it was really hard and scary and no security. And I thought running the family business was where I belonged, that I didn't belong there. And it's the worst feeling in the world to not know where you belong, you know? Especially,
a lot of people feel that. I mean,
yeah, yeah. So I was really freaked out because I was very clear, like, do well in school, do well in college, go to a good law school, do well in law school, go do corporate law. Like I was clear, like I was very like ABC, and I pretty much had a plan and I did it. And so it was really, really nuts. And so I went back and I'm still working doing the Wall Street thing and I'm miserable. And I just was like, you know what? I really should try to do this comedy thing. Otherwise I'm going to regret it. So I did. And I left and I went into comedy full time, but that involved a lot. Like I owned an apartment on the Upper West Side, which, you know, you're New Yorker, fancy area, nice two doorman building, you know. I sold that. I sold everything because I couldn't afford to keep that. I would burn through what savings I had. And Leno told me, if you're going to do stand up full time, just do stand up. Don't buy anything, you know, and start then needing to pay bills, you know?
right. You got to be able to fund. You got to be able to fund. It's a business. You got to be able to fund your business.
Yeah, exactly. And if you spend time buying things, then you've got to pay for those things and you've got to go get a paying job. Then you're not doing your art. So I sold everything and I moved to a rooming house for $327 a month in New Rochelle.
In New
Yeah,
Rochelle. Wow.
yeah, Glen Island Park.
Yeah. Was it on North Avenue?
I can't remember the street it was on, but it was right by the water there, right by the harbor, where the park is. And um, and I remember because I used to go running in the park, and there was always a lot of geese shit everywhere because there's a ton of geese up there.
Yeah, the Long Island Sound. No matter where you stand, it's the slip and slide run.
Yeah, exactly. And I lived in I had a 10-by-12 room with a hot pot on the floor. It was this old house. It was like those old film noir movies where the bad guy lived in a shitty rooming house. That's what it was like. And there was I shared a kitchen and a bathroom with 8 other people. It was a 200-pound. There was a 2 ex-cons, 2 recovering addicts, and a 300-pound phone sex operator who sold Herbalife diet products door to door.
Wait, where was your girlfriend during this time?
I had her move to Boston. We were living together in New York because Boston's a good comedy town. She works in museums, and I convinced her to move to Boston so I could spend a few days a week in Boston doing doing my thing, you know, up there, and then a couple of days a week doing my thing in New York. And so that's what so I was just completely obsessed with doing stand up. And Boston was a good town to get stage time in, you know. So that's what I did. And now I start living the life of a comic, and I'm going to this hell gig and this shit gig and getting $25 here and getting stiffed for money and having to drive, you know, asshole comedians to gigs because they were the headliner. And it was just like, it just was so disenchanting and not what I had hoped and thought it would be. And I was just really kind of like, what have I done? And I started to have these doubts, and I really screwed up. And you know, I'd work a gig and then I'd get off stage, and the guy who owned the bar was like dealing drugs out of the bar. And so he'd stiff me on, he'd leave before I got off stage, and they'd stiff me on my money. Then I'd drive 2 hours the next day to get the money, and he said he would be there, then he wouldn't be there. It was just terrible. And these are people in my Wall Street job that would not have been allowed to like Xerox documents, you know, but now they had control of my life, which was really a shitty feeling. So, I'm doing this, and one day I look out the window, and my I kept my Saab. On my you know how when it rained a lot, like for a day, like nonstop, a day and a half, and the sound, that sound can flood over,
Oh
and it
yeah.
flooded over into the neighborhood. And I woke up one morning and my Saab was under 4 feet of salt water, like
Oh,
up to the dashboard.
and that's I had sobs. And anytime any water gets anything that can go wrong with the sob will.
Yeah,
Water's like the antichrist for a sob.
yeah,
It's like goodbye.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly. And not only that, it was salt water, and it literally was up to the dashboard. Like, in fact, I had eaten the night before in the car, which I did all the time because I was driving back from the gig, like fast food, and the white, like Kentucky Fried Chicken bag was now floating in the top of the car, like
Hmm.
at the level of the steering wheel. And it was February out, so I called a tow truck company, and they're like, "Yeah, we're going to need a professional diver." I go, "Why?" He goes, "Well, it's really cold. My guys will get hypothermia. You need a professional diver to go under and hook the car." And I'm like, I remember thinking, when you have car trouble, you never want to hear the words professional diver, like ever, right? So now I'm sitting there and I have to wait for the water to recede, and I'm seeing my life flash before my eyes because I got to wait there for like 3 hours to let the water recede so I could go back in and get my car. I clean it out. I'm trying to drive it. Um, then about 2 weeks later, I get a letter from the IRS, and I'm getting audited by the IRS.
What are they looking for? Nothing?
Well, the problem was I had nothing, but the problem was I had a lot of income, and then suddenly I had none, and so it raised a flag. So they called me in, and now I have all these doubts about what I've done with my life, and I'm lost, and I feel like I've got all these abilities, but I don't know where to use them. Should I be a lawyer? Should I be an investment banker? Should I be comedian? Should I be running the fin? I'm lost. I'm completely lost and really like unhappy. And I sit at the table with the auditor, and he's like, "Well, he's thumbing through my returns. He goes, you had all this income, and then suddenly, like, you've had losses. What's going on?" I go, "Well, I was on Wall Street, blah blah blah, and I left to be a comedian." And he looked at me and he goes, "Yeah, right. Where's all the money?" He thought I
Oh
was.
yeah. Oh yeah, of
He,
course. They think you're embezzling,
yeah,
Like,
exactly. And I go, "No, no." And I kept explaining it, and then he said to me, yeah, I'll never forget. He goes, "Who in their right mind would do that?" And he became the personification of all of the doubts that I had. He was literally saying the things out loud that I was saying to myself. What have I done? Why would I do that? This is stupid. And I don't fault him for not understanding. He took the traditional path, and he had a secure job, and I assume he was happy or close to happy or whatever, or not, and just satisfied with what he had. So I understood the questioning, but and I said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you, man. This is what I did, and you're probably right." And so I was really at a low point between that and my car being drowned and these gigs, and I'm not seeing my girlfriend, and it was just the worst. And I get a phone call from my friend who was somebody I worked with on Wall Street, and he's like, "Well, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm standing up." He goes, "Well, I'm gonna open up um, like a new division or department of an investment bank, and I was thinking about you, and I could use some help getting it off the ground." I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm good." And he's like, "Well, I'll come in, just talk about it, whatever." When we talked about it, and it was like 6 months work, pay me a good chunk of change that I could use to, help fund my stand up career. So I hemmed and hawed, and I'm like, "All right, I'll come in and interview with some people." So I went out, and I, bought a new suit and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm on the New Rochelle Metro North
oh yeah.
platform.
I know that train well.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
standing there with a Wall Street Journal under my arms, in a blue suit, and look to my right, look to my left, and there's 40 other guys and women that are dressed exactly like me with Wall Street Journals under their arm. And I'm like, what am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing, because it's not like I had a calling to go back. I was just freaking out, and I just was like, let me go talk and see what this is. So I go in, I have an interview, I get a call back, I have another, and then I get a job offer to go back. And at the time, maybe around a month before that, I had shot like a little stand-up TV thing, like 5 minutes, and it just was like, stuff that I shot, but they didn't know when they were going to air it. Excuse me. So, long story short, I have 2 weeks to decide if I want the job or not, and I can't decide, and I'm really freaking out. And I remember talking to my um, college counselor at the time, who was like, just try to relax and don't make any rash decisions. He goes, you have to understand where you are right now. It's like you left the shore and you're swimming toward another shore, and you're at the point in the horizon where you can't see the shore you left and you can't see the shore you're going to, but know that there's a shore you'll get to if you keep going. Because he really wanted me to stick with the comedy thing, because he felt like that. I think he personally felt like that had more value in society, and you could really move and touch people with it. And he had, nothing wrong with investment banking or law, but just it had a different, higher purpose. He felt the comedy thing. Anyway,
what visual came to my mind during that? Remember that scene in Jaws when the girl is drunk and she swims out there and she's on the buoy and the shark's attacking her from underneath, right?
Right.
So there you are, like in the buoy, and you just gave me the best visual, because my dad was that person on the Mamaroneck train station, because that's where I grew up, right?
Uh-huh.
And I used to look at them when I was growing up, thinking to myself, "Holy shit, I don't want to be these people." Because I saw the Wall Street Journal, I saw the 30+ years, I saw the house in the suburbs, repeating your childhood again. So yeah, you were being, and it's funny, the IRS person was the validator. You always, when you're about to move forward in a career choice that's fucking a risk, there's always that doubter that comes in. It's like, yep, sure enough, the universe gave you the validator. Here it is, the IRS agent. You're crazy. Go back to Wall Street. And there you were getting attacked. And I love the college counselor. So what happened?
Yeah. So he basically, so I take the whole 2 weeks, and it's the day of, and it's like a Friday at 5:00, and I got to call and say yes or no, and I can't make the call. I keep hanging up the phone. I'm trying to dial and I can't. And then call my wife, my girlfriend rather, and she's in Boston. I'm crying. I'm like, I'm not crying, but I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm confused. And then I call up and I accept the job offer. And then I hang up and I call her back and I start crying like a baby, because not out of happiness, but because I'm like, I just took this really intense job. I don't really want it. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't believe how lost I am. It was a really scary feeling to be that lost, and have all these doubts, which I never had. And it was just crippling. And so I swear off comedy. I move her back to New York. I recreate my life, get another 2-bedroom apartment, buy a new TV, blah, 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 new suits, swear off comedy. And I start doing the Wall Street thing. And within 2 months, I was back in the clubs doing stand-up again, like an alcoholic going back for a drink. And so now it was pretty evident to me that sort of this thing picked me and I didn't pick it, And right. So then, we're 6, 7, 8 months into this job, and we're selling this HMO in Arizona, like an $800 million sale. And we're at a meeting at the client's office in Arizona, and the CEO was like, I don't know, maybe 60, 65, and nice guy, comes in. It's like in front of everybody, goes, all the other lawyers and bankers in the room. He goes, did I see you on TV last night? I'm like, no. He goes, yeah, I think you're saying some funny stories or jokes or something. I'm like, no. He goes, yeah, it was you. He goes, it was that. Turns out they aired that thing that I shot, and they didn't tell me. They didn't tell me when they were going to air it, and he saw it, and I'm like, oh shit. And I'm standing there. I'm like, just like the thing with the blood stain. I'm like, okay, I'm caught. I'm dead. And he just takes this pregnant pause, and he goes, it was great. He goes, hey, everybody. My investment banker's a comedian. What do you think of that? Calls his secretary's assistant, and he goes, why don't you, because Cheryl, isn't there a comedy club in town? Why don't we get a couple of tables? We'll bring everybody out, and Paul can perform for us tonight. I'm like, no, I'm good.
Oh, no.
And it turned out that he thought it was great because it humanized me. It made me more than just some, money-driven banker or a lawyer, which is not necessarily a fair thing because, my friends are lawyers and bankers, and there's some good people, but, there is definitely, the priority is money, okay? And So I, it kind of freaked me out that he responded that way. And then I became his favorite on the deal to the point where like he just wanted to go through me and not my boss. And my boss got mad and jealous about it. And there was a lot of tension over that. And then I just was miserable in that job too. And I kind of think that the guy at the HMO who ran the HMO was the validation that I needed from the traditional workplace world that it was okay for me to do this. I worked in a very macho M&A world, and something as frivolous as telling jokes seemed just that, frivolous. And I think I needed someone. I wasn't as strong a person as I wished I could have been, and just said, I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do this. I needed them to say it was okay for some reason to validate it. And so
we all need it. We all look for validation.
Yeah. And so, but I never did before. Like I wasn't like that growing up or doing my thing. Like I would just do my thing. But, I guess, obviously there's a part of me that needed it. And so when I got that, I think it kind of just told me, you know what, and I'm here a second time and I'm miserable. I didn't really like the guy I was working for. He was kind of a dick and tried to take credit for everything anyway. And just wasn't very good to his people who worked for him. And I didn't trust him. And I was like, so I left again. And I moved out of that apartment because I couldn't afford to stay in that apartment. And we moved to a smaller apartment, my wife and I, and then had a kid and all that stuff. And then that's kind of where I said, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm really going to do it for a while. And if it doesn't work, and then I started to get some traction, and then I got hired on the Daily Show to be a writer on that show and got to perform on that show as well. And then things kind of took off from there. And so, that was over a period of time, a significant period of time, that this slowly turned into a decision to do it, as opposed to waking up one morning and saying, this is what I'm going to do. Now, I don't, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, I think most people go through some variation of what I went through. I think it's rare that somebody just wakes up and literally goes, I hate this, I'm going to change and do this. I think that that's something that has to come to somebody over time. But I could be wrong, but I don't think you just wake up and suddenly hate your job. I think over time you dislike it and become disenchanted with it, and then you start to look other places,
Well, it's the little things, and I think a lot of people don't get that, and that's what I love is that, look, I have a similar story. I crashed and burned in this car business. I hated it. I was doing it for the money. And then I went to this restaurant in San Diego in the late 90s because I wanted to be a motivational speaker and I wanted to get into personal development. And I wanted to be on TV playing myself and giving advice. And Tony Robbins was sitting at this cafe on a regular basis. So I used to go there and stalk him, literally. And I didn't even have the money because I was on such minimal money after losing my money, but I had to invest in this vegan meal. And we all know that a pile of rice and beans at a organic vegan place in the United States is 4 times the price of a steak. So,
right.
I don't know why they put organic on it, and all of a sudden we got to pay quadruple. And there one day, Tony Robbins showed up, and I remember getting on my old analog cell phone, calling the guy who I was working with in a network marketing company, and I said, "He's here." And my friend says, "Well, go and talk to him." I go, "Oh shit, you're right. That's why I'm here." And I sat down. And I said, "Hey Tony, my name is David. I've got this company called Slight Edge, and I'm working with this company called Millionaire Makers, and it's the mindset of a millionaire. And I lost all my money because I realized I didn't have an abundant mindset because my Jewish grandmother. I literally vomited this all out to him because my Jewish grandmother grew up in the Depression, and she was an immigrant, and she taught me how to be cheap. And here I am losing all my money, and I really want to get into personal development. What inspired you?" And I sat down with him for an hour, which to me was worth more than anything. And he inspired me to follow my dream. But you're 100% right. My dream just didn't happen overnight. I had to get a roommate in the year 2000 who stole my checkbook, and that was the last bit of money I had left. I had to then go give my Tag Heuer watch, which was left over from my my days of making money, and I had to exchange it for an ounce of weed with my manager, who in turn sold the weed for me, and I was delivering pot to all his actor friends. And I thought to myself, holy shit, have I fallen far from wherever I once was? And I used to think I used to be somebody. I had to hide the car, because the repo man was coming. So you have to take a risk if you're passionate about something. And that's what I love about your story. If you're fucking passionate about something, yeah, you might have an idea that you want to do it, but you have to put it out there every single day, and you've got to get your ass kicked, and you have to have the IRS moments and the sob flooding moments. And, your wife, what a godsend she was. I mean, because so many women would have been like, listen, Paul, you fucking made a lot of money. We're going to bring up some kids. We got to move to the suburb. Fuck this dream. And she supported that dream. And now look at you, you're on the Stephen Colbert show writing for them, correct?
Well, I do the warm up for them, and I perform on the show. Yeah. I kind of pulled back from writing full time on shows because it took me away from my own performing, and I tour around the country. I do TV appearances on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News as a commentator, and I act. I just have a partner movie coming out, so I have a really great situation where I can go in and do the warm up, and perform on the show occasionally as well. And so, doing stand up or whatever, and so it's sort of like a perfect. Steven and I go back to the Daily Show together, and so we've known each other a long time, and it's really great. And the Daily Show, because of that, I got Emmy and Peabody Awards for that, and it's been my own special, and it's the dream, so to speak, has come true. But there's a lot of pain, and I meet people when I talk about this in my act around the country, and I always have people come up to me. I'm a dentist, but I really wish I'd stuck to my writing. And I have this novel I would never finish, but then I got the kids and the boat and the summer house. Or like a kid will come up to me recently. I'm an engineering major, but I really don't want to do that. My parents are making me do it. I really want to be a musician. What should I do? Or people are in relationships that aren't right, and they're afraid to make the move to get to a better place. I'm not an advice guy. I'm not in your business. I just tell my story by example. But if somebody asks me, I basically say, you got to decide if you're willing to go through fire and pain to get what you want, because you have to do that. I meet people, and I could tell you in a nanosecond, somebody who's going to do it and somebody who doesn't want to do it. Somebody who doesn't want to do it is trying to do both. Like, they still have their job and they still have their thing, but then they have this side thing, and they have like a separate card that says they're this writer or performer, but they're trying to sort of do this parallel thing, and you can't do anything really well while trying to do something else really well. You just can't. And you certainly can't do art really well. Not because you have to suffer for your art. It's just because it's so time consuming that you can't possibly exceed in relation to people who are doing it full time, who are living, eating, and breathing that particular art form or writing or whatever it might be, versus a person that's working a 70-hour-a-week job or a 60-hour-a-week job. I know very few people that work 40 hours a week anymore. And then also trying to do this other thing. The other thing becomes a hobby. And some people acknowledge that it's a hobby, and some people are living in denial that it's a hobby. But that's fine if that's what they want to do and that works for them. But I told somebody recently, just a week ago, I said, you have to take a wrecking ball to your life and wreck it, raise it right down to the ground. And you have to start all over again, brick by brick, if you want this other thing.
Best advice ever. I mean, I remember when I had no money, I went to a business coach and I said, look, I want to do this coaching, and you call it the thing. It's so funny. You called it the comedy thing. I want to do this coaching thing, and I want to do it with dating and relationship advice, because I'm really good at meeting women and I'm really good at understanding people. And he said, stop calling it a thing. I said, I can't call it a thing. The thing doesn't make money yet. Everything else was making me money.
Right.
It's funny. It's like we all go through it. And I did. I took a wrecking ball to my life, and I literally put foundation by foundation. And I remember there was the validation moments, like I remember I did an MTV special, an hour-long special on me, and I was like, holy shit, this thing, and I still called it a thing, this thing is working. But yet every time I called it a thing, the universe wasn't giving me the full money. Like I was making good money. I was back in the six figures again and I was doing well. And then all of a
Mm.
sudden I had to sit down in '06 with a lawyer friend of mine. And he says, we're going to write this book and then you're going to embrace this business and you're going to tell the fucking world, and he looked at me, he says, you've done 3,000 radio shows. He says, you've done TV shows. He says, you're not doing a thing anymore. This is you, man. You are a personality. You are an advisor. You are a coach. And I owned it for the first time. And the second I owned it, I literally saw my income explode. Like I literally made 3 times the amount the following year. And
Right.
since then, I've been doing fantastic. And it's funny. You do have to take that wrecking ball and say to yourself, fuck it. Okay, this is who I am. I mean, this is who I am. I'm going to do this. I'm going to sink. I'm going to swim. I'm going to eat pasta with butter, even though I've got gluten and dairy allergies. I'm going to swell up
Yeah.
from the inside, but I'm going to make this fucking work. And I agree with you. So many people will come to me too and they go, I want to do this. And they call it the thing. I want to kind of do this business. And it's like, you can't do something part-time. And I think Tim Ferriss, a lot of people got into the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week. There's parts of my business that I don't have to work on because I've hired other people. But when it comes down to being the person or the personality or driving the car or doing the writing, I can't outsource that. You can't outsource certain things.
Right.
And you have to fully commit. And that's what I love is that you gave up. I mean, look, we all know, and I've got friends who are investment bankers, and we've watched the show Billions. So we all know the money and the houses in the Hamptons. I've got a friend who's got a $30 million home in Southampton. He never
Yeah.
gave up on the investment banking thing, and now he owns a hedge fund, and he hasn't worked in 10 years, but he kicked ass for a long time. And you made that decision. I think people need to listen and realize that if you want something, you have to fucking be a man, take yourself by the balls, or a woman, take yourself by the lips, and just fucking make a decision and do
Yeah,
it.
you're gonna get yeah. Well, in anything in life, you're gonna get the shit kicked out of you. And I was saying, I talk about it in my act, like in high school and college, it doesn't replicate life because everything always usually kind of works out every day and every week. But then you step into the real world, and 50% of your day is getting your ass kicked. I mean, and in whatever world you're in, you don't close the deal, you don't make the car sale that you wanted to make, you don't hit your quotas on this. Or you don't get booked on that TV show that you wanted to as the actor or comedian. So you have to figure out um, if you can take it in the solar plexus, and the difference between those who really make it and those who don't are the ones that say, oh, you can punch me as many times in the face as you want. I'm not fucking walking away. That's basically the message I give my son. I
Oh,
say it's really pretty simple. It's not that complicated. You have to have a level of talent. Charlie Rose said that he'd interviewed the biggest people in the world at whether it's politics, world leaders, actors, whatever. And he used to think that all these people at the top of their game were born with some special talent that God touched them on the forehead and nobody else had. And he goes, and then he realized after interviewing a lot of people that it was a little bit of that there was definitely some special talent, but mainly the thing they all had in common was the 10,000 hours premise,
yeah.
that they all just worked harder. And not just worked harder, it's not just working harder, it's working hard and then not giving up when it doesn't work out. And the second part of that, they asked Burt Reynolds one time what was the key to his longevity in Hollywood, and he said sticking around. And I think what he meant by that was just emotionally picking yourself back up, which is what it is, at least, for me. And I think a lot of people, you get down and you go, I can't fucking believe it. That thing was perfect. I should have got that. And then, we all have our way of dealing with it. Could
No,
be anger, could be guilt. And then but you go, what? You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go at it again. I'm going to go at it again. I'm going to go at it again. And so eventually you break through a wall. Hopefully, some don't, maybe the talent's only limited, and, the other problem is you end up running a race with, I was running a race with all my friends on Wall Street that stayed, that I was never going to win, because I go to their houses and I'd get bummed out because one of my friends just bought this big, massive house, or he's got an Aston Martin. And I'm like, I could have had that. And I have this instead of that. And And that was very toxic for me for a while. And I had to stop doing that. And, you know, I couldn't visit some friends for a while because I couldn't deal with just seeing the new stuff that they got that I could have had. Cause I literally today I'd be your friend. I'd be a multimillionaire retired and, you know, probably wouldn't be working the last, and, so, you know, but those are all things that I think you have to deal with emotionally, to get to this other thing. I believe that if something is really great and special that you want, you're going to have to go through a lot of fucking pain to get it. I think it's commensurate with what you want. If you know, if you just want to kind of have a 9-to-5 job and not be a celebrity or not be a whatever or not be the captains of a corporation, then you're going to have a pretty easy work life. If you want to be running IBM or a major television star or a top sitcom writer in Hollywood, you're going to go through a lot of fucking pain. God, this doesn't give you that. That's my experience anyway.
Same experience. I mean, you know, I've run the gamut. You know, I did not stick in my creative field. So as life, and I always felt like I had car dealerships and I had all these businesses and I was making money and I was flipping homes and I was always bored, you know, always felt like something was missing. So I created the character David Wygant, you know, I mean, I really did. There was no dating industry. There was nothing going on. I was just a guy that was good at picking up women, you know, and that was like my God-given skill of really connecting and listening and allowing people to show themselves and getting deep and having no fear. And I worked on all that stuff. You know, I worked on who I am. And I the same way, you know, I feel the same way you did. It's like I went through a lot of shit, went through a lot of pain, and I've stuck around. I mean, even now, you know, I'm 55 years old and you know, men and women still hire me. And people always say, you know, a guy 30 years younger will hire me to go and he'll want to hire me. I'll say, man, you're really expensive. It's like, but you know, how do you understand millennials? I said, I understand people. I said, you want somebody with life experience or you want somebody that's just going to show you a quick little fix so maybe you can have the opportunity to meet somebody. But to me, life is going through the pain. Life is believing in yourself, because I live by one mantra. I mean, every day I wake up in the morning and I say to myself, thank you, God, thank you, universe, for another great gift of life. All right, what the fuck am I going to explore today and what magic is going to happen? Because you only live once. My dad was a boring stockbroker who sat on the Mamaroneck train and got the New York Post and went to Duane Reade and picked up the prescription drugs at the end of the day. And I looked at him and said, you are my anti-role model. I want to be the opposite of you. And life is about taking risks. I really appreciate, this is the longest podcast I've had yet. But
sorry, I didn't mean to be too long-winded.
No, it was fucking great because honestly, because our past, our stories are very much alike in taking risks and eating out of cans and everything else. So, Paul, where can they see you? You got a website?
People can go to paulmecurio.com. It's Mecurio. The reason I say that is I had to change the spelling of my name. It was Mercurio, 2 R's, but there's an Australian actor who was in Strictly Ballroom and Exit to Eden. He got into the Actors Union before I did. So I had to change the spelling of my name. And he was a dancer and he had tight pants and like had tank top t-shirt and like was spraying water on himself. And people would Google me and my friends would be like, they'd get him and they go like, are you doing gay porn? What the fuck is up with you, man?
That's funny.
Yeah. So it's paulmecurio.com, Mecurio. My podcast is the Paul Mecurio Show on iTunes. It's free, or Audio Boom if you don't have iPhone. And it's one-on-one interviews with the likes of, my guests have been Paul McCartney, Stephen Colbert, Bryan Cranston, Neil deGrasse Tyson, James Altucher, Bob Costas. So sort of A-level guests from different walks of life. I think the purpose of my podcast is for people to be exposed to people that they think they know, but they don't really know fully, or people that they don't know that they should know, that it serves, and it's funny and entertaining, but also like there's some information being passed on. And I'm touring all over the country. I'll be in I'll be, and people can go to my website, paulmecurio.com, for my tour dates. And I'm going to be in West Palm Beach, Florida, coming up in the next month or so, and all over the country, and Twitter and Facebook at Paul Mecurio is the same thing. Everything's Paul Mecurio, my name. So yeah, I'll be in New Jersey in March. I'll be in Bloomington, Minnesota in March. West Palm Beach in April. Albany in April. Syracuse. So all that's there on my website.
Perfect, Paul. You've been one of my favorite guests. And you ever in Los Angeles?
Thanks.
Are you ever in Los Angeles? Do you perform out here?
Yeah, I do. When I come out, at the different comedy clubs. So I'll let you know. We'd love to get together and chat and hang out, because I feel like we're kindred spirits,
Yeah, totally. We've been inspired to live our life of passion, not inspired to live our life of, I hate to say it, regret, but
yeah, or fear,
or
yeah.
fear. But I'll tell you, life is all about passion, and it's great. And you're giving your son, and this is, I've got a daughter too, so you're giving your son the greatest lesson in life is following your dreams. Because if we all can do that, we wouldn't have any issues when we get older, because we would actually have the freedom of choice. And that's a great gift of being a parent, is to give our children that lesson.
Yeah, it's funny. I got just to finish up. One of my friends was like, who just retired from Wall Street. She's like, "Wow, man, so jealous. You have such a great life. You're doing this thing and whatever." And it's like, I was surprised to hear that from him. This guy's got a place in Florida, a place in Greenwich, and blah blah. He's got all the money he could want, and yet he's saying that. So, I guess everybody, for a lot of people, the grass is always greener. But I just think at the end of the day, you get one shot at this, so like you don't have any regrets, and if it's not right, my feeling was and still is, you could always go back to what you're doing, somehow. But at least you tried it, and that's why I would encourage people to go for it, but be prepared to go through some pain, and if they think they can do it without going through some pain, they're just kidding themselves.
Pain is something that we all need to embrace, because pain is actually the greatest lesson. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, man.
It turns us into great people. It turns us into interesting people. You look at anybody who's ever gone through life, they've all experienced ups and downs. And that's what life is. Life is not something you can memorize or learn in a weekend. Life is something that you need to experience.
And even the guys on Wall Street, by the way, go through pain, in the sense you think, oh, okay, well, no, what's pain? I mean, they work really fucking hard, and a lot of them have broken marriages and lives because of their work. And it's not like they're making all that money for no work. I mean, I know a lot of people want to paint Wall Street guys as these evil money grubbers that kick old ladies to the curb, but that is not the case. And so, it's risk reward, it's payoff, if all that stuff. So anyway, it all kind of works itself out in the end, I think. So
it always does.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, thanks, man. This is great.
Man. I appreciate the time, and let's definitely stay connected. And I'm in New York. I'm in New York all the time. Starting when the weather gets good, I usually come every couple.
Well, yes, shoot me a text and let's get together, and send me a link to this when you post it, and I'll put it out on my social media.
Definitely, I will.
Okay,
I will,
great.
Talk to you soon. All right, man.
All right, thanks, man. Bye-bye.
Right, bye.
Thanks.